Welcome to America's most livable city. Please ignore the invisibles with me. See, Pittsburgh, we built its economy, but we still lead the nation in black poverty. Welcome to America's most livable city. Just ignore the invisibles with me and state your business, cause here, the place you live in depends on your race and privilege.
Hey there. What's up, everybody? Welcome to What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know. I'm having audio issues, so my colleagues may grab me up every now and then if we're having challenges. But it is good to see everybody. It's been 2 weeks since we were on the air. I am joined, of course, by Jasiri X, who is the head of One Hood Media, and Dr. Jamil Bey with the UrbanKind Institute. We're going to be talking about critical race theory, y'all, today and education, and how the whole idea of talking about race and inclusion and everything else is becoming demonized in order to secure white supremacy. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. But, you know, we'll get into the detail later, but folks are trying to hold their place in history in spite of what is actually happening. And so we're going to have a wonderful guest, Dr. Epryl King, who is teaching about CRT and how students really should be exposed to all of the aspects of race and the history of race in America and how it affects us now. So hang on to that. But before we move to that, and Dr. King, we want to do some catching up. Now that we've got 2 weeks between when we meet, there's always a lot to talk about. And so where are we going in this first 15?
Well, speaking of history, this week marks the 50th anniversary of the drop of maggot brain. I don't remember when it dropped. I'm 54, but I mean, that's important for a couple of reasons. One, I give my P-Funk salute, you know, that's my hello. But the importance of that album and that song and that protest, you know, what they were talking about in the maggot-infested brains of Americans, you know, just the rotting in the culture and the way that we pursue so much of the flesh, pleasures of the flesh, rather than advancing people's interests. How we're a country where we put property and riches above people's interests. And this was, you know, one of those early protest albums, one of the more important albums, just one that the artist's ability to kick ass. I mean, Parliament Funkadelic, player to player, you know, from Bootsy to Eddie Hazel to Bernie Worrell, you know, that's a band. But that aside, its influence on culture, on hip hop, on, you know, rock, soul, it changed the game. And so just a shout out to that. But and connecting it to today and just, you know, just the maggot brained city council.
Oh, man.
You know, stuck in their just rotten commitment to the way it used to be. You know, I was coming back to bring it back to that. But what's going on?
I was waiting. It was a good connect, man. I wasn't expecting that, so I got to kind of regroup here. But thank you for that. So what else is happening?
Well, I think
we've got some controversy going on
now. Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned music, and today is the birthday. You mentioned, you know, Funkadelic. Today is the birthday of two really MCs, influential MCs. One, MF Doom, who passed away recently, super influential underground independent MC. And also today's the birthday of our very own Treble NLS, you know, one of my personal favorite MCs. So happy birthday, Treble. But yeah, I mean, it's always controversy. It's funny, I guess, in Pittsburgh. And there has been this conversation around this American Rescue money that the city of Pittsburgh get. I think it's $335 million, and how to spend it. And I know that there are folks that have been organizing around it. You know, a shout out to Celeste Scott. I know she's somebody that's kind of reached out to us and doing some organizing around that issue. And a lot of folks feel like that there hasn't been enough public discourse around how to spend the money. So they had a meeting yesterday, and pretty much everybody that spoke basically said, you know, we need more public, you know, input on this around how to spend his money. So it was like, you know, city council and the mayor kind of got together. And then there's a question of, should, you know, this process include this upcoming administration. We hope and believe it's going to be Ed Gainey, but then there was another question of like, should this outgoing mayor decide what's going to happen as this money can lay the blueprint for the next 4 years. And so I don't know if I think there's going to be another public meeting next Monday. Mm-hmm. So folks can sign up to speak. This last one was on Zoom, so you didn't have to physically go down there. And so just encouraging folks to basically, share your voice. I know there was a call specifically for Black speakers. I got something from Tim Stevens that was specifically about like this money should be used to benefit Pittsburgh's most disenfranchised folks, which are Black people in the Black community. We had Randall Taylor on. He said it all should go. Randall was like, we should get all of it. Which I don't have no issue with neither. But I do think our voices should be heard. And when you look at what, how can we begin to transform the city that's the worst in America for Black women and, detrimental to Black people in so many ways? Can these resources be used to benefit our community? I guess is the question.
Is there some reparations in that money?
Certainly should
because Dr. Bey and I were just off a really interesting conversation before we came to this one about how decisions are made, about, people using money for communities without community input. How go behind the scenes, they look at what their data is telling them, and then they want to roll it out and have a conversation about it and then feel hurt because they put all this time in to make these decisions. But folks are saying, is this for us? Then why isn't it with us? And there is just this fear of not being in full agreement. We got to figure out how to have conversations. Leaders have conversations even when there's controversy. They shouldn't run and be afraid of it. And they end up with a better product in the end. And that's just all we keep asking people to do. Stop making decisions for us.
I was going to say, and this just in, I'm just looking at this on Twitter from Rich Lord. It said in 2020, the city of Pittsburgh's workforce became proportionately more male from 74% to 77% and more white from 75% to 77% than it was in 2009. So you now have like the city of Pittsburgh's own workforce being almost 80% white male.
Dang. That's a hell of a number.
And that's like, what are you saying to us at that point? I mean, that makes a hell of a statement.
And what they're saying by their actions, and this is like just the entire city council, the entire process. I'm not including anybody in the discussion about how this money is spent that I don't respect. And this is what this is telling you. That these folks have their own agenda. And if you look at what they've proposed to money, all of them, all 9, Bruce Krause he's so meek and feeble. He's not proposed anything for his district that is meaningful or transformative. Lavelle and Burgess, doubling down on their agendas that they've already had to continue the displacement of Black folks out of their communities. And the rest have been silent. And it's like, what have you proposed that is actually going? This is a shot in the arm. This is a chance to do something different. And your commitment is to what you already were doing, which was not working. Hazelwood at the last census was 48% Black. It's now 30% Black because of y'all's work pushing folks out of those communities. Look at the numbers that are happening in Homewood. Hey, people are getting pushed out. And your plan is to invest in what you already been doing, where here's a chance to let's do something different.
If you want to.
We really need to organize heavily with these next rounds of city council folks.
Right.
Who deserves this seat?
And I think you would think that after what we saw with these local elections, that folks would kind of see that we obviously want a different vision. We want a more progressive vision. We want somebody that's going to make necessary changes to make the city livable for everybody. I mean, these were the predominant issues in the last election, right? Issues around making it livable for Black people, as it is for everybody. Around policing, around education, like these were the principal issues. So it does seem strange that, to me, this would be an opportunity, particularly for Councilman Burgess and Lavelle to say, we're going to fight for Black Pittsburgh to receive specific resources with this money. And kind of like you said, I haven't really seen that, that now, maybe there's something going on that I haven't seen, but I haven't seen that. And I think like, this is where we need folks to this is kind of like, and it's something that you said, you talk oftentimes, Dr. Bey, about what leadership looks like. And, leadership to me in a time like this looks like I'm going to fight to make sure that some of these resources go and a proportionate amount go to Black people in my community because of what we're owed and what we've lost. And I haven't really seen that. And, that's something that we really need to see from these leaders.
These are not private conversations. Yeah.
Okay. That's what they say they're doing. They say this is a pro-Black agenda, that they're doing these things by following the models that have displaced people in every other city. And it's, it's happening. It's happening everywhere because you're using the same blueprint, moron. I'm calling names today. But this is what they say. Oh, it's not just a Pittsburgh thing. It's happening everywhere. Well, do something different, fool.
Right.
All right, let's get off the subject. We'll actually start calling real names.
We don't want to do that. We want to be included in the conversation about what's best for Black Pittsburgh. Okay, next.
Yes. But I think it's interesting, Dr. Russell, because you also had a similar conversation around the possible Wilkinsburg-Pittsburgh merger, and that was a lot of folks in the community felt that it was a process that was rushed. And they felt like that what was needed was more of a community input in this process. And so I know that there was a question that it might be on the ballot, or I guess folks were kind of pushing it to be on the ballot in November. Now it's not going to be on the ballot in November. So there is more time to hear folks' voices. And I think this is kind of what we've been pushing a lot of the emerging Black-led political organizations is around, like us getting real power, community power, us making real policy decisions and decisions that are going to affect our community. You're talking about Wilkinsburg, which is a primarily Black neighborhood. How would this affect folks? How would it benefit folks? How would it be detrimental to folks? And if we can't, and if we can't properly explain that, what I'm saying, then it probably shouldn't be put up for a discussion. If it's going to be put up for discussion, what we have to do is have principled conversations about how does this look, how will this either benefit people or how might it not benefit people. And so I'm glad that there's going to be more time for that, because that's what we've really been advocating for: more community voices, more community input, more community power.
Yeah, because if you start off with this is what I want to have at the end, then you fill in what you want to happen. So the process isn't open, and you've set it up in ways that you get what you want. But real community processes don't do that. You put questions out. It reminded me a little bit, especially at the beginning of this show. Remember, our chats would be live and people were actually strategizing, and you saw that happening. And I see online these conversations about Wilkinsburg where people are just bringing up some really, really good points. And they're kind of disparate. Sometimes there's been some really good back and forth, but that's what it takes, because you won't have 1,000 folks going at your neck for the next 5 years because you made a decision that wasn't inclusive in the conversation. So why is that so hard? Across the board, it continues to be so hard for people just to open up and trust enough to have, and trust that people are smart enough. And part of that is, if you're not part of the professional crew, of leadership, then nobody really wants to hear from you. But you're really impacting people who live and work and play and go to school in these communities. And that's who we want to hear from. So that's, we just got to figure it out. What else did we miss over the last couple of weeks that we need to talk about before we move into this very light conversation on critical race theory?
My thing is, and this is maybe a question for Dr. Bey, and I know we have Ask a Black Doctor coming up this Thursday, but I'm getting nervous. I'm seeing these COVID numbers go up again. I'm seeing doctors talking about that's for your mother. I'm seeing doctors talking about their emergency rooms are being filled. again.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Illinois is really in trouble right now. Illinois
are we going to have to do something like, I mean, how are you seeing things, Dr. Bey, and what should we be doing?
Well, it looks like, considering the holiday weekend last week, we would start to see the noticeable spike, if there's to be a spike in these next couple of days. Okay. So it would have been, but we're seeing an uptick. But, if you start watching the numbers for the rest of this week, they'll know whether we're spiked or not. But we still have, very low vaccination rates in most Black communities. The public health community, the medical community, the pharmaceutical community have not done enough to earn the trust of our folks to get this vaccine, at scale. And I think, there's still a lot of vulnerability out here. And so considering that, if you're one of those folks, we still should be wearing masks and social distancing. The virus, I mean, this Delta variant is dangerous, more so than the others. And so if you still decided, hey, I'm not doing it, cool, that's, but wear a mask. And I don't see people wearing masks anymore.
Because obviously most of those are being affected by the variant of people who have opted not to get a vaccination. And those people are ending up in hospitals and critically ill. And this thing is moving much faster than the first round. So, I mean, we really need to, I was taking masks down for a little while, but, we are back to some of our earlier practices full tilt. So, we just, again, this show is not about telling you what you have to do. That ain't our job, but it is our job to that we take seriously about sharing information that is critical to your health and well-being. And, really starting to think about where you were a year ago until this thing gets figured out. I heard a couple of people that I know in my social media talked about some few folks who had gotten COVID post being vaccinated, and at least 2. So I don't think that's happening broadly, but, usually they're not being hospitalized if they get it. But I mean, it's possible. So, I mean, I don't know. We're not out yet. That's what we're trying to say.
That's evidence that the virus is still circulating.
Yeah.
And so, if you have a 80 to 90% protection of getting the virus when you have a vaccination, those are the numbers that you're looking at. But no severe, very rare, if any, severe hospitalization issues with folks who have been vaccinated. But, it's not 100% immunity.
But you ain't gonna die, and you probably won't be hospitalized. So that's a good thing. Right. So let's get to moving into our topic today. We have been hearing some of the craziest conversations about critical race theory. We've got legislators banging on lecterns, talking about banning discussions on diversity, equity, and inclusion, race, period. They don't want to talk about slavery. They don't want to talk about anything that makes white people not look good. You can laugh almost to the extent in which how foolish it is until you realize they're trying to legislate white supremacy. And then it just stops being funny. And then you've got people screaming about CRT. They don't even know what it is. So a little bit about me, my doctoral work was really based around critical race theory and Black feminist theory. And so I had to go back and check myself, like, oh, was what I was studying so controversial? Did I actually miss it? Because what I'm hearing reported on these news stations and with these legislators didn't look anything like what I've actually been studying. And so we wanted to talk about it. We know this has been whirling around your head on the news, but we wanted to bring somebody in that is working on this, that is working to teach about this in our schools. And we brought in an amazing person today, Dr. Epryl King, who is with Raising Achievement in Monroeville and Pitcairn. I think it's RAMP. Yeah. But she's also a teacher and has been teaching for a lot of years. And in particular, is going to be teaching about critical race theory in our schools. So we welcome you and we thank you for coming on with us.
Hi, thank you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, so why did you jump into this pool? Why are you doing this? It's controversial, but you're in there. Why are you doing it?
You've really hit the nail on the head when you said that what you studied for your own work, your own research for your dissertation, it doesn't look anything like what they are projecting. And so at first I thought, this is kind of nonsensical. Why would anyone do that? Until I realized, no, this has gotten to the point where it is now impacting the public school systems in different states around our country and has the potential to impact us here in Pennsylvania. So it's no longer funny. It's no longer nonsensical. It's like, wait a minute, are we seriously going back to Jim Crow policy? Are we really going there? Because I thought that was done. So
what they're introducing is it's educational malpractice. That's what they're asking you to do. It's complete educational malpractice.
What their idea of it is a perversion. It's not what critical race theory is.
So can you tell us? I mean, I kind of gave my summary, but it was my summaries can be loaded. So I'm going to ask you to explain it a little bit. So in terms that everybody that may look at this will understand what critical race theory actually is.
All right. So with any teacher who's had to review literature and theories that we had to learn to apply to our educational practice, critical race theory, one of the newest theories, well, it's not that new, but in education, it is becoming more pronounced. And so as it comes in, we're looking at, okay, how does this body of literature that we're learning apply to today? So critical race theory, it's just a perspective. It's a way of looking at race and racism as a part of our culture and how it impacts in critical race theory in the legal realm. It was about how is it impacting the different legal proceedings that impact the outcome of different things that were being pushed there. But in education, we're looking at it, okay, how does this apply to how our students are experiencing school on a daily basis, and how does this what are the outcomes that are impacted by the lack of being able to meet the needs of our students through their background culture, engaging them in ways that recognize race in the forefront of our teaching and say, this is a way to engage our students, to make them feel more inclusive, to make them feel more valued, and to show them that they're a part of the fabric of American society and not just something that's not the norm. We'll talk about
I don't know. We've been trying to change history real time from, since the lost cause after the end of the Civil War. I mean, there's just this constant thing of, Confederate soldiers were really heroes, and, Black folks were, we were trying to save them from themselves. I mean, and we are actually watching it real time now as we watch the Capitol get stormed, and we're watching people try to tell that story as if what we saw wasn't true. And so I think when it gets to teaching kids about race, and really it's slavery, it's the slavery thing that is really making them crazy. They do not like how they come off in that whole thing. And so it's like, if we don't talk about it or minimize it, then we're good. You got your Black History Month and two a day and a half, three pages in the history book about slavery, and keep it moving. So now with this kind of awakening and the blackening and browning of America, although it does not seem to be happening inside of Pittsburgh, there's just so much more conversation about it, and it's making let's call it what it is, older white men crazy. And they are just like losing it and shutting it down. So I know you were, like you said, you're kinder in how you explain it, but tell me, I'm gonna back up. What are you thinking, Dr. Bey, over there? Is this how you're seeing it? What is creating?
Yeah, and I'm thinking so slavery. Okay, let's put a pin there, but let's look at fast forward. Look at the GI Bill. And the way that the GI Bill, funded white folks' education and their housing in the suburbs. And then look at the redlining policies. So to say that these policies had, were racialized in their operations, in their applications, is now you're with these bills that they're talking about. You're forbidden to talk about those things in the classroom now. That's critical race theory, by describing those things as having an impact on today's outcomes. The war on poverty, the war on drugs, and its desperate impacts on Black folks. Wait, no, Don't talk about that. That's critical race theory. This would be forbidden to discuss in any classroom or in any program that receives federal dollars.
It goes even further.
Fools go through what they're trying to do. I'm gonna stick with the maggot brains.
I would say it goes even further, Dr. Bey. I mean, you know, me and Dr. Russell were talking about how in Tennessee, there was a book called Ruby Bridges Goes to School about, you know, this young girl who desegregated schools. I believe it was in New Orleans. And they were saying like just the description of the white people that were mad that she was going to their school was racist. That because she described them as being angry and, you know, not wanting her to be there, that was detrimental to white students, young white students, to read about this book. And so to me, like, you know, talking about redlining and all that stuff, they're even saying like, if you even, this is just Black history. You know, this is that they're basically trying to really like legislate the teaching of Black history. And really in Pennsylvania's law, it was race and gender. So then if you start talking about women's history in any way that might make a man feel uncomfortable, they're actually talking about in Pennsylvania's legislature that you will lose funding for this fiscal year and the next. And so what happens is now educators or administrators of these different institutions become scared. And they're like, I go to Penn State all the time. In fact, last time we was up there, your son was with us, rode up with us and made a trip with us, Dr. Bey. But now a school like Penn State would have to think twice about bringing Jasiri X in one hood, because I could say something that would make, and I'm sure I would, that might make some white students uncomfortable. And now they could lose their state funding. And so to me, this is really a straight up attack on Black history. Do you see it like that, Dr. King?
It is absolutely a straight up attack on Black history. It is in and of itself racist.
Straight.
I mean, if you think about all the different, theories and things that we are taught as teachers and pre-service teachers in the classroom for what makes up good teaching, then, this is just another one of those. And it happens to be a body of work highly contributed by people of color. And somehow only the body of work by people of color is the one that is under, the gun here. So, I would say the ban in and of itself of the ability to talk about race and how it impacts our students and to actually help our kids to have a more well-rounded education and to help white middle-class mainstream kids actually have an appreciation of people who are not just white middle-class mainstream. I would say that that's racist. It goes back to like the Jim Crow laws of only whiteness is allowed and permitted here. And if anything else comes, we're going to punish you for that. That's not good, obviously.
I heard a congressman talking about this the other day. And basically what he said was, we want to return to the 1950s education of nationalism, patriotism. I mean, he all but said it just like I did. And that clearly, we need to understand our history as it is, the truth. And his truth was white people, founded it. White people made it what it was. And all hail to white people. Let's talk about 1776 and all this other stuff. But the rest of that stuff is background noise that is going to confuse our tender white children. And they're not going to be good patriots, and they're not going to understand how to be wonderful nationalists if we do anything else. And somebody actually literally said something about the way it used to be in the 50s. What was?
I think I look at it and I look at my own development, and it's like when I began to read and study my own history is when I became socially conscious, and that's when I wanted to get involved in changing things. So to me, this is a direct result of what we saw happen in 2020, where we saw not only did we see a lot of not only Black people but a lot of people, indigenous people, brown folks, white folks in the street, protesting, wanting real change. We saw folks for the first time because of the disproportionate impact on COVID in our community, and the protests talk very succinctly about white supremacy, about systemic racism, And then we saw, you know, black folks, brown folks, indigenous folks, marginalized folks go to the polls in that same year in 2020 in this historic election and win the election for Biden. Not only that, but, you know, win the Senate back for the Democrats. So to me, this is a direct, you know, this is people who are looking and saying, uh-oh, they got too much education. Right. They know too much. You know, we've been having conversations about
dumb like the Trump followers. We need you to be as dumb as these folks over here. So if you're going to keep teaching it, what we're going to do is punish you with money so you can be as dumb as Trump followers. And so they're trying to legislate idiocy.
Yeah. Right. Then you could be manipulated. You know, there was a book, yes. I forget when it came out. It came out like maybe like 10 years ago called The Dumbing Down of America. And so it's like you can be manipulated if you don't know. And they can just kind of sell you lies. You know, they can say like George Washington never told a lie. And they can say like, you know, that they fought the Civil War because they wanted to free the slaves. Like they can sell you these lies. And the thing is, it's like, right. Basically, they're saying, these people are saying, we want the lies back in education. And we want folks to believe that, like, you know, it was just a guy. And it was like this, you know, kind of controversial, but he was on some morning talk show, and he was talking about the actual history of Haiti. And he was talking about France bankrupting Haiti and making Haiti pay reparations after Haiti became free. And the people on the show, like the white hosts, they were in shock. They were like, wait, what did you say? This really happened? I can't believe it. And he's just sharing just a small portion of history. And so now if we begin to know all of this, we act different, we think different, we organize different, we begin to take power. And so where do you start? You start with these children. You can't have these white children actually knowing what their ancestors really did to get this country. You can't have them knowing about their ancestors giving smallpox blankets to indigenous people and slaughtering and scalping indigenous. You can't have them know the real history. So they want to go back to how it was, which was a lie.
Where white women were heroes. And so, I mean, I was this last weekend, and I talked to you guys about it a little bit, discovered something in my own family. And I'm reading this thing where my great-grandfather was talking about his dad, who was born in 1945, and how they had them walking from Kentucky to Mississippi because, hey, tobacco wasn't selling us the way cotton was. So let's move this kid to Mississippi. And he talks about him being on an auction block in Columbus, Mississippi, being sold for $800. This is a reality. We were the engines of the economy, and they didn't think anything about taking this child from his family and selling him for $800 and you know, working him until, you know, he was freed at 21. And so it just makes them, you don't look like a hero when you were a slave owner, when you use human beings' bodies in order to build economy and build a country. And so it's a whitewashing at a level. I don't know. I can't say I saw it coming at this level. Trump just set that fire, man, and it is just burning out of control. And now they realize logic is not necessary. You just mandate something, and it doesn't have to make sense. And you can get Republicans to vote for it, and you could change laws. And they're like, we're sitting in the seat. We don't care what you think.
Y'all are pretty fired up today.
The hypocrisy of it, if you don't mind.
Please.
The hypocrisy of it is that the very things that they're claiming are wrong with what's going on in schools are the very reasons why we need critical race theory to continue underlying what we're doing, because of the kids who are already feeling bad, the kids who are already excluded from the curriculum, the kids who are already impacted by not being able to be engaged through their own lived experiences. So everything that they're claiming would be bad for their kids is already what's already being done for students of color. So it's almost like
years.
Right. So, you know, and the implications, I would like to explain what this looks like in the classroom in the schools for a moment.
Great.
So you may be teaching a class, and, you know, you're heavily relying on the teacher materials, which are often out of places like Texas, who purposely leave out things like that. And so the students have these textbooks and they're reading. And let's take something like Independence Day, for example. Let's say you have Black and brown students in the class. You want to celebrate Independence Day, but for those sitting in the class, they're like, well, for who? You know, if you're going to celebrate it, you have to celebrate when we got our independence. You can't just say that that's the independence for everyone. That's not true. Likewise with Columbus Day, you can't, you know, have a celebration of Columbus Day. You got kids who have background of Native Americans in their class, and you're sitting there rah all about Columbus Day. And meanwhile, someone who has Native American in their background, a lot of us do, will say, wait a minute, how about the genocide that happened because of this thing you're celebrating? The people who have lost their languages, they've lost their traditions, their customs. They were put inside schools where they were made to speak English, dress English. They lost who they were. That is what you call harm to kids. That is harm to kids. And that's where we're headed with critical race theory, because if you ban it, you're continuing to harm kids by not including them and forcing, if there's any indoctrination going on, it's that which has been happening already for years. It's that when Black and brown children are in the classroom, and the teachers, if they're teaching in a way that doesn't include the kids, those Black and brown kids are also feeling left out. You know, their backgrounds aren't valued, or they're not tapped into, or God forbid they lead to some kids who might have like an attitude because they're being left out. And now let's contribute to the school to prison pipeline, because these students who aren't being respected and engaged are upset about it.
But
so,
it shows like
to removing this from the schools. And when I say removing this, I want to be clear. I don't know any school district in any classroom who is teaching this book. I don't know anybody who has this book and is saying, I want to teach you about Derek Bell and Patty Davis and Richard and Delgado and Stefancic. There's nobody in there teaching their kids that. But what we are saying is the theory that underlines that says we need to remember race when we're planning events. We need to remember race when we're planning curriculum. We need to remember race when we're teaching our kids. And most teachers are white middle class. So we have to remember that maybe I have to know something other than white middle class to reach the students in my class who are not white middle class. That's what critical race does, is it says, don't forget to look through that lens, or you're going to forget these students.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think they don't care about Black and brown. I mean, I think it's clear. It's like, one, they don't care about Black and brown students or our history, and I think their thinking is they want us to like assimilate. This is their thinking, right? You want us to come over here, but you want us to assimilate. You want us to talk about how great America is, and I love America, and America's the greatest country on earth. And that's what you want to do. You don't want us to have any type of critiques about how America came to existence and that real history. And it's interesting because we're doing a project right now about education with the organization called Allies for Children. And we interviewed primarily, Black and brown students. And one of the main issues that they had was the lack of culturally competent curriculum in the schools, that they barely talk about stuff during Black History Month, that there's barely any conversation about wasn't a lot of conversation about a protest or even what was happening currently in this country, or even like real relevant history happening in the school. So here were high school students saying, we want this, we want to be able to have these discussions. We want to be able to bring that into school, but the school's saying no. And so now you're making it even worse, I guess. And you don't want, and so it's like, do we have to start having like, whether it be like book clubs or like, school after school type of things, or should we be building our own independent schools?
It won't be the first time, Jasiri, that we've had to take control of our own education. I mean, and even in this historical stuff, I was looking at my grandfather. He was talking about how, and this was in the late 1880s, how they gathered books from wherever they could to teach themselves what they needed to know because of how they had been shut out of educational systems. I think about when we took 10 kids from the Hill District to Ireland. We went up to Northern Ireland and we were in Belfast, and all over the walls, the Catholic folks had pictures of all the Black civil rights leaders, and they knew their histories. They knew how they worked. They knew everything about the struggle. And the Black kids that we brought there, didn't know who half those children, who half those leaders were. They didn't know anything about their stories. And these white, freckle-faced, little redhead Irish students understood Black civil rights better than our own children did, because our kids were not being taught about it in their own schools. And they were all kind of shocked. And then they knew at that point what they missed out on in their own history. And so we're talking about taking this up to a whole nother level. And so the other thing I want to talk about a little bit is, how do we hold schools, I mean, our educational systems accountable, from the high schools to the grade schools to those teaching teachers at Pitt, at Carnegie Mellon, how are we holding them accountable to not allowing themselves to be censored and saying to the state legislator, go to hell. We're going to teach what we know to be right. You can't defund all of us. You know, what we're going to have 3 white academies around here, and you know, they can't defund everybody. And I'm going to be disgusted if they fall for this crap.
Let's not go in too deep, because let's look at the big picture game here. This really, as Jasiri said, this has nothing to do with the kids. They don't give a damn about the kids. This ain't about that. This is a unite the right rally tool. This is, we want to scare you. Look, they're coming after your babies to teach them this shit. This is what they're trying to do. And so those other folks who was like, yeah, Trump's a little bit, those folks, those white men who voted for Biden this time, this is to pull them back to that side. That's what this is. This is not, they don't give a damn about kids. They don't give a damn about public education. If they did, this would not be the system or structure that they have. But having said that, there are implications for the classroom. But that's their big picture. Steve Bannon, you know, that clown has no, this is all collateral damage to him and what he's trying to do.
They got to be cracking up. Y'all, let's get back to this. There was one who gave this information to Fox News, and Fox News planted this. Wow.
Is it her audio or mine?
It is breaking up. I can't hear you.
And
yeah, I think you're breaking up, Dr. Russell. You're kind of breaking up.
Okay. I'm gonna go down and come back up.
Okay. Did you want to start over? We got you now.
You have me now?
Yes.
Yep.
It's weird. It's just periodically going out. What I was saying is, this one guy, and I'll say it fast, started this entire controversy. And when Fox News let it go, we've had all these people, including some Black men on the right, who are saying that we're teaching racism in our schools. So how are you, talk to us a little bit, Dr. King, about what you want to teach to parents and teachers about CRT. What's your approach?
So actually in the next month, you mentioned that I'm with Raising Achievement in Monroeville and Pitcairn, and it is a nonprofit. And so we're actually holding an event to inform and educate the community on what critical race theory is, and what it is and what it isn't, and how it applies to what our students need to have in their learning experiences in the classroom. We know that many districts are implementing culturally responsive trainings and things like that in their schools and school districts. So we want parents to see, okay, whatever it is you think or you may not know or whatever about critical race theory, let's take a look at what it is and what it's not. And then this is how it applies to how teachers are actually working with the kids in the classroom. You will not see students belittled because of their race. You will see students who are uplifted and are learning that our students have heritage that has helped build this country equally, and that we can learn from each other, and that if we can have our students to see and feel themselves in the mirror of their learning environment, then they're going to feel more empowered. They're going to feel more included. And let's not forget this. This was something that I actually encountered when I was in school. The idea of acting white. That if you're smart, somehow you're acting white. Well, that's because they haven't been taught that if you're smart, you're also acting Black. And here are the people who've done it. This is what they've built. And this is what you can do too. They have to see and hear that. Likewise, students learn racism through the lack of inclusion. So if everything is sort of through that lens of white middle class, which is what the opponents of critical race theory would like, then the students of color will end up being hurt. They already have been hurt, and we're trying to correct that with culturally responsive practices. Hope that answers your question.
It does. I mean, you're taking on a lot. This is, you know, I commend you for doing this, because again, you know, some of us are just like so fed up with how crazy the conversations are, but and you're just tired of teaching things that seem so obviously twisted that you just get exhausted in doing this. And so how do you think this could potentially, you know, it's great to give people an understanding, but how is that really going to impact what, or do you think it will impact the legislature's kind of behaviors? Or is this something you're just trying to do on a local level to make sure people understand what's happening?
No. I think through educating the community, we're empowering our community to be able to speak, you know, competently about this, unlike others, to speak with an education about this and be able to reach out to their legislators, be able to reach out to those who would be putting these policies in place and saying, hey, I think you're wrong about why you would want to put this in as a ban. And I think that it would harm a whole lot of kids. And I think if you understood that, this is what I learned about critical race theory, this is what's being done in schools, this is not what's being done in schools, then you would see that, you know, honestly, it has huge implications for our country in so many different ways. If we want to make sure that all of the students, not just white, but Black and brown students as well, are not just simply functional in society, but rather competing globally with other countries who have also high levels of expectation achievement, then the last thing that you want to do is find a way to oppress the students who are becoming the majority of this country in a way that would impact their education.
So, I mean, what are they teaching our kids? I mean, mine just graduated, be going to college, but Jasiri, you still got some young ones, and I mean, this is straight impacting these kids that you have in public school systems if they're allowed to get away with this. I mean, I know you're going to teach them on the side about the truth, and that's for sure. All of us do that, but you know, we may be looking at a plan B on how to educate our kids.
And my son is at Urban Academy, and they are specifically, you know, they have Malcolm X birthday off. Like they, you know what I'm saying? Like they're a school that's like, you know, the art history was built in. And that was one of the reasons why we chose Urban Academy, because of that commitment to teaching us about our culture and our history. There is a question, and I did want to bring this to you, Dr. King. Ryan Brown asked a question. He says, like, is there a way to bridge the gap between Black parents who want, you know, critical race theory type of, because it's not really critical. This is, I'll say, Black history taught in school, and parents who prefer that not be taught. Is there some way, like, you know, because I think this is kind of, you know, it's like the further divisiveness that's happening in this country. Is there a way to kind of a bridge? I mean, I would say probably not, but I'm asking you as an educator, Dr. King, that, you know, to say, okay, you know, like, have you talked to white parents that when they hear critical race theory, all they recognize is Fox News is, you know, thousands of attacks on it every hour and get scared? Have you encountered those parents, and what are you saying to them?
Well, I haven't had someone say, I don't want you to teach critical race theory. I have heard people say that they felt that there's no, race has no business being discussed in schools. And they felt like, why should my kid, you know, be, you know, exposed to this? So, you know,
to reality, watching my child know reality. I'm sorry.
You know,
what does that mean? I can't get my head around it. What does that mean? Not exposed to it? Racism is woven into the American flag. How? I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I don't know what that means.
it shows a lack of intolerance. It shows a lack of respect for those that are not, you know, like ourselves. And I think that a good quality trait for families, something that they should embrace, is getting to know each other. If there's one thing that's divisive, it's forcing a country to learn about one specific aspect of its country and leaving out all the others. That's what's divisive. Critical race theory informed teaching, such as culturally responsive teaching, embraces everybody's contributions. The only reason I can think you would want to delete somebody's contributions from our society is racism. You know, that's the only thing I can think of. If you don't want people to know about people that don't look like you, then you have a superior attitude. Then you think that yours is best. All the things that they're putting in their bans for why you shouldn't have critical race theory taught in school are all the very reasons why it needs to be taught in school, because it's already being done.
Dr. King,
so to answer your question for sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I said your point. I mean, that especially in a country like the United States that is made up from people from all over. This is not like Korea, where most of the people are Korean for the last 1,000 years, or Japan or Ethiopia. You know, this is a country that is made up of people from all over the world, forced here, invited as indentured, captured, you know, people who were populated and, you know, murdered, and a lot of different white folks who came here. It's an ugly history. And for you to try to distill it to one clean, pristine version, you know, who are you lying to? And why do you want to live in that la-la land?
I think it says a lot about a person who would want something like that.
It really says more about them than us. But then again, to me, you know, they're pouring all this water into a can with holes in it. I mean, you can't really do what they're trying to do. You can legislate and everything else, but it's not like people are going to stop talking about it, or that the history. I mean, their people won't be exposed to it maybe for a while and be less comfortable, but you can't just walk through the streets of America now and ignore Black and brown people are the numbers, are the realities, are their histories. You can oppress it as much as you can, but they can't win this war. They didn't win the first one.
They know that, and that's not their intention. Their intention is to make sure that every white person is on the same, you know, that they can convince them all to be on the same page.
Can they?
I do think they are trying to convince all people in our country that are white and who have children in the education systems, if they can convince them that their child is somehow being harmed by this, then they will succeed in getting it banned. And not just that, if they do ban it, I think you all know from past history, laws aren't always written for the people who control the laws. So all you need is a law written. And if you want to control people, you enforce the law only on those people. So right now you're looking at Texas banned. You're looking at Idaho banned. I'm sorry, but if I'm a teacher in Texas or Idaho, and I want to keep my job because I do want my family to have food on the table and I do want my family to have shelter over their head, I might be thinking twice about how to do this. And even if I think the way I'm doing it is right, all they have to do is misinterpret it. That's all they have to do is misinterpret it, just like they're doing now. And then they're able to do what they want to do with you. You're out of a job and their kids are not learning that. So I would be cautious about saying that this isn't going to impact us. It absolutely is going to impact us. It's going to give them an ability to control what's being done in schools, and it's going to undermine our, Black and brown children's ability to get an adequate and appropriate and equitable education.
Yeah,
so I mean, when we were at Penn State and we organized, how at a school like Penn State can you get a Black homecoming king and queen? Because every single Black person voted for that one, and the white folks voted for their favorite people. And so this is the flip of that. As they become a minority, they need to get on the same page. They need to tighten the ranks and get everybody focusing on their agenda. That's what this game is about. And so we'll scare the hell out of you. We'll lie. The truth has nothing to do with these folks. They don't dwell in that business. They don't dwell in the principles of democracy. They've shown that as they attempt to repress votes and keep people silent. That's not their agenda. Their agenda is power and control by any means necessary. They will lie, they will kill, they will steal, as they've always done. That's their history.
Yeah, I keep thinking that we're modernizing. And so I think it's still shocking to the system, the tactics that have gone on in the last 4 years in particular. But I mean, now we know we too can't be naive about the level that people are willing, the stakes and how high they're willing to raise them in order to maintain power. And it becomes downright dangerous. It's not only the miseducation of students, but it is the threats of violence. It is, there is just, I mean, I looked at a white teacher the other day, a white man who I thought was he was teaching a class on, and he was talking about slavery. And he made one child in that class uncomfortable, who went home and told his mother. And the next thing we know, the school board fired him. And there are all this protests at his school by Black and white parents about this. But at this point, they're just like, we told you, don't talk about this. So, I mean, that is going to start happening based on what you said, Dr. King, around money. But we need to start challenging funders and other people who need to begin. We all as a community to be thinking about Plan B around how we educate, not only just educate, raise the bar on the level of education around things that involve CRT. So, and start to teach it earlier. Because I didn't even see it until college. I didn't know anything about the concept of it until I even went to college. But now I want to teach kindergartners.
May I share this? In the grand scheme of things, when we look at the impact on our students, we have to also look at the fact that the majority of teachers in the classroom are not people of color. And that we need to know that there are many of them who want to do good by our kids. They want to do right by them. They want to find ways to better meet them. They have seen what it's like when they don't understand material, and they want to find better ways to meet and reach those kids. And these are teachers who are white. So I think one thing that we also need to consider, even just, it's so hard. It's easy to say they. We don't like it when they say that about us. It's easy to say they. But there are people who are white that are critical of critical race theory, and there are people who are white who are pro critical race theory. As you can see from the union, the National Education Association backing it, the American Federation of Teachers are backing it. They are both saying that we will defend our teachers, Black or white, brown or otherwise. They will defend our teachers for teaching the truth. So I just wanted to put that out there because there are so many advocates out there. And we do need to allow them to work with us and work together because they do control the body of education in America.
I couldn't agree more. And they need to move from advocacy to abolitionist behavior in terms of what they do. And, and I appreciate it. I mean, I'm looking at a friend of ours together, Janet, who is in the comments right now, who is, is a white woman who is teaching and working with you, I know, on some multicultural educational efforts in Monroeville. So there are strong voices. Fear is the enemy here. When all this happens, when we get scared to do what we know is right, they win. Whoever the they is. The they in this case is the people who are trying to pull this crap off right now. And so, we've got to figure out a way to work through these fears. I know we're closing in on 3 o'clock. We usually do a wrap. There's some last words. Anything you wanted to share with us, Dr. King? You've been phenomenal and really, expressing this, getting a good helping us get our audience to have a good understanding of the challenge here. And, I want to thank you before you even say your last word for being able to do that so clearly and with such relevance. So I appreciate that. Anything you want to add as a kind of a last wrap up on this topic?
There is. I want to share with your listeners that the bans on critical race theory are imminent. They are imminent. As long as there is a Republican-controlled political base for it, they are being banned in these Republican states, and they are already being proposed. It's been proposed in the state of Pennsylvania. This is here. This is now, and we need to advocate for it. So we can't just sit back and watch the TV and watch the news and watch people debate. We have to get out there, raise our voices to our governor, to our mayor, mayors across Pennsylvania. We need to be in front of school boards, letting them know that this would not be acceptable for them to have this removed from the class. We need to let them know that we will fight hand, tooth, and nail for our kids to be treated equitably, and that banning critical race theory and anything that would be found that would be informed by it is hurting our kids. That message needs to come out clear and concise and loud.
Dr. Absolutely. King, can you tell us what RAMP is? We didn't even give you that chance. We jumped right in.
Well, actually, you know, in answering Jasiri's question earlier, how would you get communities? How do you get people to? I don't remember your exact question, but what I did is I reached out to some mentors who told me, you know, the community has to be informed in this, and the way to do that is to communicate to them. So RAMP came about as an effort to communicate the community on the implications of the racial achievement gap, other subgroup achievement gaps, and which we now learned that the term is truly opportunity gaps. And so RAMP is a medium for doing that. We're a nonprofit. We're a group of about 15 people right now that either live or work in the community or have children in the district, and we're working together in advocacy. We have provided tutoring, we've provided incentives, because we want to make sure that we are a voice that's being heard. So, you know, if there are any advocacy groups out there, any organizations, do that. Get in front of the school board, work with them, let them know that your voice is to be heard, not to be silenced.
Absolutely.
So that's who we are.
All right.
Well, good.
Doing good work, doing excellent work. So I know you have an online presence as well. If anybody wants to look up your nonprofit, please go out there and look at Raising Achievement in Monroeville and Pitcairn. You make it clear what your work is, and it is worthy to go in and dig and see if people can help and volunteer, and you're getting it done. All right, gentlemen, any last words, anything coming up that people need to know about before we drop the curtains on this for 2 weeks?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dr. Beck.
So I wanted to acknowledge, Cheryl, you had, you were both very passionate today, but I know that Cheryl dropped 2 new hashtags or taglines. Educational malpractice was a good one, and legislated idiocy. I caught both of those. I said I will be incorporating those into the language. What are we coming up? There's I said right now the push is to get your voices heard in this American Recovery Act money, and it's not just the city of Pittsburgh. The county has another $300+ million. Every municipality, every school district has some money coming. And, like you said, they're going to make the same mistakes and do the same kind of things that they wanted to do, or they're going to let you have a voice here. As Dr. King was saying, don't be silent. Get up, get out, and do something. So that's our work this week, just, getting folks out and getting them in the face of these people who are trying to make these decisions without including us.
All right. Jasiri, any wrap for you?
Yeah, thank you, Epryl. We have, this week in white supremacy. Tomorrow has been a lot. It was one of the most epic Karen meltdowns. I don't know if y'all saw. It's just a lot happening. What England, the soccer stuff. I mean, we got so much going on. So tune in to that. That's tomorrow at 6. Ask a Black Doctor is this week. It'll be Thursday at 7. We will have, we're going to be talking about the Delta variant. We'll be talking about, going back to school. Should you get your children vaccinated? What does that mean? And so if you have any questions, and that's, I think that particularly folks that are, maybe you want to know, you're not sure, come and ask the doctors, and that's kind of why we wanted that forum. So that's Thursday at 7. Also just wanted to shout out YBMKQ celebrated their 5th anniversary this weekend, Young Black Motivated Kings and Queens. It was a really great turnout. Everybody enjoyed it. So shout out to, young people really, leading the way. And then also want to acknowledge yesterday should have been the 21st anniversary of Antoine Rose II. We had a celebration for him. Keep, Michelle and his mom Kyra, sister, and this whole family, just in your prayers and your thoughts. You know, understanding it's a very difficult time for them, and let's hold them, you know, and show them as much love as we can.
Send a love their way for sure. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for your wrap up words. We've got call to actions. We've got call to prayer and support for those people that we love who are continue to go through it in our city. So we will see you guys again in 2 weeks for What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know. Bring in another topic that we have to talk about, but we'll let you know soon what that is. And hopefully you'll come back and continue the conversation. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.
Thank you.
Welcome to America's most livable city. Please ignore the invisibles with me. See, Pittsburgh rebuilt its economy, but we still lead the nation in black poverty. Welcome to America's most livable city. Just ignore the invisibles with me and state your business, cause here, the place you live in depends on your race and privilege.